Welcome to Future Foodcast. I'm Pam Line-Miller, your host, and I shout out and thank you to our sponsor, Farm to Plate. They are creating tomorrow's food business ecosystem today. You can find out more at farmtoplate.io. And as you know, here at Future Foodcast, we love to bring you insights from around the world. Today, we have them from India. I'm so excited to bring a just seasoned professional from India to you today, Ashwin Bhadri. He is the founder and CEO of Equinox Labs. Welcome to the podcast, Ashwin.
Thank you so much for having me here, Pam. Looking forward to our conversation. I've been hearing a lot about Future Foodcast, and the episodes I've heard have been amazing. So I'm really honored to be here.
Well, and we're thrilled to have you on for your insights into the food ecosystem there in India. You have a wealth of experience, several different, I know I brought up Equinox Labs, that's going to be the focal point for our conversation today, but honestly, you have started many businesses in India, and a lot of them are in the food business.
So I started Equinox Labs 18 years ago, and I had this image of myself when I was 18 that, hey, by the time I turn 30, I want to have 7 businesses. And the reason was I had heard that, hey, if you want to be successful, you have to have 7 sources of income. So if you want to have 7 sources of income, for me, when I looked at my mom and dad, they ran a business. I'm like, okay, income means a business. So I just made a statement on my 18th birthday. And on my 24th birthday, I started Equinox Labs. And every year after that, I've started a company. I've started a total of 15. I have shut down 6. I have sold 2, one in India, one in the US. And I currently own and run 7 different ventures. Equinox is my oldest, one of our largest. And personally, where I spend 95% of my time, the reason is that I think it has the largest impact on society. So that's why I spend most of my time at Equinox Labs.
Well, and this was really the impetus for, like you said, the beginning. And tell me why you even got involved with the food industry, starting Equinox Labs. What was your, why that?
So my personal why has been to improve water, food, and air quality in India, right? That's been my personal why since I was a teenager. And I always wanted, like, if anyone ever came to our country, people, shied away from drinking tap water. They were like, oh, we always have to have bottled water. We only have to eat in 5 stars. And I'm like, I don't think that should be the case. 2, people in India should be able to enjoy all the different cultures. They should be able to eat anywhere, let be street food in a restaurant, in the hotel, right? And I think safety was missing in all of that. Like, it was never a focal point. And I'm like, I think I can do something in that space, right? So since I wanted to improve water, food, and air, I said, if you want to improve something, you need to first start by measuring, right? So I started by measuring water quality, then food quality, then air, environment, and then we started advising our customers on what they can do to improve. And that was one of our things that made us different, right? Because every other lab just gave you a report. But Equinox focused on actually helping customers understand that, hey, this is wrong with your water. This is the steps you need to do to get it right. Hey, this is what's wrong with your food. This is the steps you need to make it safe. This is what's wrong with the air. Here's the things you need to do to make your air safer. And that really leapfrogged us, years or decades ahead of our competition, because we focused on our customers. And the reason they were doing it is to find out if something is wrong. And if something is wrong, they needed a doctor to fix it, right? Like when you get a report, like a blood report or an X-ray, you need to go to a doctor. But for food, water, air, there was no doctor. So right. We started to play that role, and customers really started enjoying that specific part of what we did. And we added a great layer of customer service like none the country has seen before. And I think those 2-3 things together really helped us to scale. We're one of the fastest growing in the country today. And it's because that we have our why is very clear, right? Our why is not money. Our why is not how fast we grow, but it's how many lives we impact. So that's really helped us get together, a group of like-minded people, which is who we call Equinoxians, who are all focused on improving water, food, and air across India.
Equinoxians, I love that. And I can feel your energy right now, just around talking about your mission and what you're doing. So what I'm hearing, and the food industry is so interesting because there's a lot of change happening right now, and after the pandemic, and there's just a lot of trouble getting workers and all that. But I hear that you're giving that added value to the industry. You're not just stating the facts. There are lots of testing companies out there, and we'll jump into all that you do there at Equinox Labs, but just like you were saying, not giving just the report, but the help on what do I do with this? Food entrepreneurs, they're busy people. They are busy serving their customers, and they can't figure out the back end and how to make things better. That a lot of times that's not their expertise. So you're bringing like that educational piece to them.
That's been a lot of fun, and something we started doing in the last 3-4 years is we've actually started even mentoring food startups on business, which is just
Sure.
like
Share
nobody
about that a little bit, because I think that's important.
So this actually started during the pandemic. I started seeing a lot of food startups coming up, but none of them had the business expertise. They did not know how to set up companies. They did not know how to hire right. They did not know how to do product dev properly. So we started mentoring these companies. I personally started mentoring a lot of food startups, right from strategy to culture to raising money to how do you get your product out there, how do you position yourself, and so on and so forth. And we've been doing that at no cost. And everyone asks me, they're like, why are you doing this for free? Like, you're happy to pay for this. And I keep telling them, you know what, I'm actually doing it for very selfish reasons. They're like, what are the selfish reasons? I'm like, if you grow, where are you going to come back for testing? Where are you going to come back for all the other stuff? But jokes apart, it gives me immense joy to be able to make that difference in a company's life, right? Because I'm a huge believer in mentorship, right? I am where I am today because of all the mentors who I have had throughout my life. I have 8 different mentors for different aspects of my life, and each and every one of them helps me get better faster, right? And if I'm able to do that for anyone, I think that's the biggest service I can do to the community. And apart from the work that Equinox Labs, does on ground, I'm actually able to help companies grow, help them scale, right? Develop better products, safer products, help them go international. And I think that impact is not something a lot of people were in a position to deliver. Like, a lot of people have the knowledge, but they don't have access to the founders. We had access to the founders, we had our knowledge. And what I teach them or what I share with them is things I have learned. Like, I've had more failures than successes. So I actually talk a lot more about my failures. I tell them, hey, don't do this. I did this and this is what happened, right? Or do a little bit more of this because this really worked for us. I literally share my own learnings from Equinox and other companies, and that lands up adding value to people. And by the way, that's the best part of mine, like helping somebody else succeed. And that, by the way, one of our core values at Equinox is we help each other succeed. And that's not just with Equinox, it's our entire ecosystem.
Absolutely. And I think the learning happens when you have the failures. That's where you learn. If everything is a success, maybe you're thinking, oh, I'm really great and I can do all of this, but you learn when you have the failures. Well, help our audience understand what the environment is there in India. There are several organizations. I mean, there's regulations. You sit on the board of some of those. Share a little bit about what the organizational structure looks like and where the testing fits in, how Equinox helps there.
So in India, the highest body of regulation is called FSSAI, which is the equivalent of US FDA, right? FSSAI stands for Food Safety Standard Authority of India, right? They basically govern food safety and all the food regulations in the country. And that body is actually relatively young. It's like 12, 13 years old. I've been associated with them since they were born. And for the last 6 years, I've been serving as the national advisor. It means a lot of the new policies that get developed, they come to me for advice, or I would actually guide them on, hey, do this, don't do that. And the value I bring to them is very different, right? There are a lot of knowledgeable people who sit on the committees, but the value I bring in is a little bit more of practicality. Like, hey, you're planning this policy, but this is how it's going to get implemented on the ground, because I deal with founders, I deal with the food industry day in and day out. I know what the ground realities are. And sometimes what they plan and what the ground realities are very different. So I kind of help balance the scales a little bit more, allowing the regulations that get made that ensure that they actually are feasible. They're actually scalable within the country, right? So that's the value that me and the team at Equinox have been adding. I know I'm the face, but there is a huge team behind me that actually supports me because there are a lot of moving pieces, right? So a lot of times the documentation that you have to create goes in thousands of pages. It's my team who actually does all the hard work. Yes, it's my face that will go out there, but I always acknowledge the team that works behind me to ensure that we as a company, we're able to deliver a lot of value to government organizations, to our customers, and to the ecosystem.
Excellent. I'm so glad, because a lot of times regulations can be made. We have a lot of regulatory changes happening in the food industry here in the United States with the FDA and FSSAI rule part that's coming up in the next year or two. And our food industry here in the US is trying to grapple with, how to deal with that. And our sponsor, Farm to Plate, is playing an integral role in actually the implementation of the rules and regulations that are happening. And that implementation and ability to enforce, those are two things that often aren't taken into consideration on the front end. So I'm so glad you're able to bring that perspective to what's happening with the India policymaking board. That's invaluable to them, I'm sure. And the food industry, the food entrepreneurs and food business owners, I'm sure are very happy that you're also sitting there giving their perspective to the regulatory agency.
What ends up happening is normally the food industry does have a voice, but that voice is typically from the top 10, top 15, top 20 companies, right? There's nobody representing the mid and the bottom. That's the role me and a couple of other folks land up playing, because we know what the problems over here are. We know the challenges, we know the issues. We also know all the pitfalls, right? We know what needs to get fixed as well, but we also know how to get it done. So many times when a regulation comes out, people are like, oh, 6 months, we want the whole country aligned. I'm like, no, that's not going to happen. You need to do it in phases. You need to do it over the next 3 to 5 years, right? Because it's not, it's a developing country. There are no lack of resources at many places. Many places, they don't have the enforcement mechanism. Like, you can announce a law, but if you're not able to enforce it, it's pointless, right? Then lawlessness starts, and we don't want that, right? So idea is we have to make it feasible for food businesses to understand what they need to do. We need to give them clear guidance on how to get it done. And there has to be an enforcement mechanism to ensure that if somebody is going out of whack, they're pulled in, right? So when you're rolling something out, these 3 factors are really critical to ensure that a law is successfully implemented across the country. So, and we are able to help founders understand why this law is coming in, how is it going to benefit them, right? A big change in mindset is when you can turn an expense into an investment, right? So when the government came up with regulations like, hey, the training has to happen, it's mandatory, there are audits which are mandatory, there are testings which are mandatory, the entire industry was like, oh, but all this costs a lot of money. The difference that we could make is I was able to show people like, hey, you're gonna spend this money, right? You're gonna spend, let's say, this $5,000 over the entire year. But how do you turn that money, rather than an expense, into an investment? How can you show this to your audience so that you get more traffic? How do you kind of build up your brand, showcasing that, hey, you're doing all this, like you're getting the audits done, you're compliant. How do you use that to drive more revenue? And once you're able to make that connection, now people are not shy on spending that money, because now they look at it as an investment rather than an expense.
Right. It's going to be a positive for their business and the consumers that are looking to shop at their business. I know you shared with me earlier about a personal experience with a friend of yours in the area of food safety. Speaking of, companies that aren't doing maybe what they should be doing, or things aren't being enforced. Do you want to share that with our audience? It was really a motivator for you in this industry.
So when I was, I studied in Austin, Texas. I did actually computer science. I did an MBA in marketing. I came back to India, started working in a company, and one of my friends, he was running a tech firm, and he came over to, demo their product to our company. I had to leave early because I had to go for a meeting. So I left. And when I was driving out, I actually saw him leave the building. So I pulled up next to him and I said, hey, buddy, why don't we jump in? I'll drop you. He wasn't responding. He just kept walking like a zombie. And I'm like, what are you doing? And so I pulled up the car. I got in front of him. I'm looking dead in the eyes. And I'm like, hey, buddy, get in the car. I'll drop you. And he's not even blinking. And I was like, something is wrong. So I literally had to force him in the car. And he's not responding. He's just looking straight ahead. And I was like, something is wrong. So I called up my then fiance, now wife. She's a doctor. I called her up and I said, hey, friend of mine is doing this. What do I do? So she's like, slap him. Like, what do you mean slap him? Like, that's your medical advice? Like, slap him? Like, not take his temperature, look at his eye? She's like, slap him, because he just could be messing around. So I slapped him. She's like, did he slap you back? I said, no, he didn't. Then she's like, something is wrong. Rush to the emergency room now. Break all the signals. Go to the emergency room. 3 minutes later, I had him inside. a hospital. We got him into the medical unit, and he started foaming at his mouth. And then they rushed him off. We didn't see him for the next 6 hours. And then 6 hours later, the doctor came and he's like, "What happened?" I told him this is what happened. He's like, "Oh, do you know you saved his life?" I'm like, "What do you mean I saved his life?" He's like, if he started convulsing in the middle of the street, till the ambulance would have come, he would have died. Nobody would have touched a person convulsing. People would be scared, right? We caught it in time and we could treat it. I'm like, "But what happened? Like, what happened?" Like, he was fine like 20 minutes before.
Right.
He was like, "Oh, he had 3 worms inside his brain." It's like, I had never heard of this concept. I know you can get worms in other places, right? But worms inside, I'm like, "How did the worms get inside your brain?" He's like, "Oh, this guy must have eaten a salad which wasn't washed properly. The eggs went inside the system. They travel to the brain because that's where nothing attacks the eggs and the worms. And they hatched there, and he had 3 worms inside his brain. And they treated it. Now he's perfectly fine, living a perfectly healthy life. But that's when I realized the importance of something as simple as washing a salad, right? So this guy who drinks and smokes once in a while has a salad, and this is what happened to him. I'm like, no, there's something we can do about this, right? So this was one of the motivating factors of like, I know that we need to do something around food safety. And when I started Equinox Labs, I do dedicate almost that time saying, "Hey, buddy, Equinox Labs is because of you," right? And that's the brainworm story. And but this is something that happens so often in countries, and it can destroy families. It can put people in debt, right? I was sitting on a flight next to somebody from ENY, and I told him what I do. And I just told him like, "Oh, I do testing of food, water." And he's like, "Oh my God." Like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Do you know the impact that your work has on people?" I was like, and this was just in my younger days, right? It's like 4 years in. Like, "No, I just do testing. What are you talking about?" He's like, "If you're able to prevent somebody from falling ill, do you know how much money you're saving that person? Because if somebody falls ill, somebody from the village has come to the city, gets his first job, starts working, but somebody back in the village falls ill, he has to drop everything, go back to take care of them. Yeah. He lost his job. He's now, whatever money he's earned and saved is now wasted there, and he has to start back again, right?" And he's like, "If you're able to prevent that from happening, you're doing a lot more for the country than you think of." And I was like, I never thought of it that way. Right? So that was a completely different perspective. And yeah, so when, like we internally say like, "Hey, if we're able to save you one life every year, I think we've done our job."
Yeah, the social ramifications of a family member being impacted by some kind of food safety issue, and some kind of it's not washed, it wasn't raised properly, some kind of pesticides were used that are bad for us, whatever might have happened, and you're helping to circumvent that. But so at Equinox Labs, just tell us briefly, what kinds of things do you test? Can you give us a high level view of?
So we do water, where we look for potability of water, the different kinds of water that get used, right, from your home to hotels to food manufacturing to environmental water. Second, we do nutrition labeling in food. We do nutrition labeling, we do shelf life. So we have the largest for these two in the country. So if you go to a mall and you take, let's say, or you go to shopping this thing and you take 10 items in your basket, 8 would be our customer.
Wow.
Right. So in that space, we are like really ingrained. Then we do pesticide analysis, we do heavy metal testing, we do food microbial safety, which is one of our most used items. So most of the corporate offices where food is served, most of them, again, 9 out of 10 offices would be using our services for microbial safety, right? So we right from auditing their vendors, the vendor central kitchen to the on-site kitchen, we do all of that. And in the last one, in environment, we do indoor air quality, outdoor air quality, and all the other environmental testings that are required, right? But our main focus has been and is food. And that's one of our biggest segments and our fastest growing segment as well.
Absolutely, because in India, there are a lot of people who eat a lot of food. So I imagine it's an endless market available out there, but you've got a well-established business. As a matter of fact, you've been able to use your expertise to give back. I know might be foreign to some people, but in India, about the meal program in the middle of the day. Can you explain the impact you've been able to have there?
So India has something called the midday meal program, in which all the government schools are given a midday meal. And that was actually done to start encouraging people from lower income families to send their kids to school so that at least their lunch gets covered. That was the idea. And it's stuck along for the last 50 plus years. The challenge with that is many times the people who volunteer for this program, cooking in this program, or they're working full time, they may not be as highly educated or highly trained, right? And there was an incident that happened about 5 years ago where 19 kids died. And this was when I heard this, it just broke my heart. And because the person could not read, she took a can. There was a big can of oil. She poured it into a smaller can so she could use it easily. But what she could not read was that the smaller can actually had a little bit of pesticide left in it. It was a pesticide can, had a little bit of pesticide that got used. Hundreds of kids were hospitalized, but 19 died. And I was like, that was just completely unnecessary.
Avoidable.
So we started an NGO called Million Lives Foundation, and every year we do something that will impact 1 million people. So last year, we actually did a program with government of Maharashtra. Maharashtra is a state which is in, Mumbai is a part of Maharashtra. And where we worked with the government, we trained all these midday meal program kitchens. All their staff was trained completely free of cost. And in the last year, there have been 0 incidences around food safety. And our work has impacted about 14 lakh or 1.4 million kids now eat safer in our state because of the program. So that's something very close to our heart. And we are now planning to roll this out across the country. And hopefully we'll have the funds to be able to roll that, because again, it's not cheap to be able to get all the trainers and coordinate all of this. But hopefully this year we'll be able to get the program out to the rest of the country. So that should be fun.
And so much just rests on education and training in the food industry, right? That person didn't on purpose do something to harm those children. It was just a matter of ignorance and inability to, not educated on what that was or how to read, whatever the situation might have been. And that training, like you said, is so impactful. I'm excited it's getting hopefully spread further in the country to more and more people. If you can figure it out for the first one, right? And then figure out how to duplicate that. The scalability there seems, the numbers are astounding of the food service workers and then the people that need to be trained. If you multiply that across all of the schools in India, that's a lot. That's a lot of people.
That's a lot. Billion plus population. So a lot of midday meals are served in the country.
It is.
So I'm excited to see how we can make all of this safer. If everything goes well between this year and next year, we should focus on doing this across all states and making sure that all midday meal programs are safe and secured. And we're able to train every single worker at least once a year. That's the goal. And it's a lofty goal because it's not small, it's not cheap, it's not easy at all. But I think that's the reason we do it, because it's a challenge.
Of course. And your brain works that way. You're very innovative. I feel like if you see a need, you're looking to fill it. If you see a problem, you're looking to solve it. Along those lines, what's next on the horizon in the innovation space for you? What are you looking at? And what kinds of things are you investigating? If you don't mind with us.
Oh, of course. So I'll give you a little bit of couple of new things we started in the pandemic and a couple of new things we're working on now. Okay. Right. So in the pandemic, we actually started 2 new things. One was a service called Hygiene Quotient, which allowed us to remotely monitor locations to ensure that their safety protocols, food or otherwise, were being followed. Right. It's like crowdsourcing that from the, there are a lot of QSR chains with 100 or 500 or 1,000 locations. How do you ensure that food safety or all kinds of safety is being practiced? So we are able to digitize checklists, roll them out in minutes across the country. And we have a remote central monitoring team that actually monitors each compliance as it comes in. So Hygiene Quotient was an amazing product that we developed, which is able to monitor food safety and all safeties across the country. The second product we came up with was called Nutropia. So 4 years ago, India came up with a concept saying that, hey, if you, packaged food has nutrition label, right? But when you're eating out, you don't know what nutrition is there in the food, right? So if you are given a choice, you would, choose a healthier option. So the then CEO, Mr. Pawan Agarwal of FSSAI, came up with the concept. But once he, retired, somebody else came in and they started enforcing that. When this enforcement came in, suddenly there was a need to look at millions of recipes and convert them from a recipe to a nutrition fact. So we built a software called Nutropia, which is able to do just that. We've done, I think, close to 6 million recipes till now, and the number is climbing. And we're able to help restaurants understand, how do you go from a recipe to, the label in a matter of minutes. So we originally started this as a self-service platform. Nobody used it. Nobody used it. Everyone was like, no, I don't have time to sit and upload. Can I just send you an Excel file? So we built out a mobile app, we built out a web app, we built a whole portal. Nobody used it. People wanted to work in Excel. So we turned it from a software into a service where, hey, send us the Excel file, we'll upload it. Then we had almost 25 nutritionists looking at all the data, making sure it's okay, right? You have no idea how many misspellings we found, like 5,000 a day. There are only so many ways you can misspell tomato, but I found all of them. So we now have a repository of over 5,000 items, and we're able to take any recipe and turn it into a nutrition label quickly. So that was in the pandemic. Now we've started a few more initiatives. One is the ability to monitor compliances across an entire organization. It's called Food Safety Index, where compliance not only is at the ground level, it's also other like licenses and so many things that come under compliances, your audit requirements. So we built a platform that allows you to track all of that across your org. Right? So that's been a fun experiment. Yeah. We came up with another very fun, and it's nothing to do with food safety, but was a fun experiment, which became a little too successful. We created a program called Athena, in which we were hiring housewives, right, who wanted to kind of contribute back to society. And we allowed them to reach out to food companies, educate them, and give us those leads. Obviously, we paid them for that. And in a matter of 2 months, we were able to generate 16,000 leads.
Oh my goodness.
And the reason I shut down the program is my sales team could not handle the leads. They said, hey, it's too many leads, can we slow it down? So we're now going to open it up twice a year, where we're going to go educate people, collect their information, and then sales can kind of reach out to them. And a big difference with us and many other companies is our salespeople, even though we call them sales, actually never sell you anything. Now, that may sound funny, right?
Yeah.
If you ever get onto a sales call with any Equinox, they're actually going to spend 15 minutes understanding your business, understanding your challenges. They're going to guide you on all the things you need to do, right? From, hey, if you're having trouble forming a company, hey, this is the kind of company structure you need to go for. Hey, here are a list of CAs you can use to make your company. Oh, for incorporation, you can do this, this, this. They will run you through all the requirements of FSSAI. They do everything. Out of that maybe 20 things we tell them, we probably do 2, but we tell them all the 20. By the end of it, the people are like, hey, by the way, how can you help us? They're like, oh, we can help you test it.
Right.
But you told us all this. I'm like, yeah, that's for you to do.
Right.
But we only do 2 out of the 20, right? The idea there is, if you educate people and if you solve their problems, they're not going anywhere. They're going to come back to you for what you do, right? So we do testing, we do auditing. We are one of the largest auditing firms in Asia. We have 700 auditors across the country. And we're one of the larger training agencies in the country as well. We have almost about 45 trainers across the country, and we do close to about 600 plus trainings, every couple of months. So that number is rising really fast. So that's been a couple of new things that we've been working on.
Just a couple. I mean, yes. And everything is service oriented. You're solving a problem, you're answering a need, you're helping people in the industry. That's what I really like about our conversation, Ashwin. It's all forward thinking, and it's kind of, you're giving before you get, and knowing that, but you were just saying your salespeople don't really sell. They're becoming more strategic partners with those food business owners that are needing some education and some help. And when they need the help you can provide, they're coming to you for for the service.
There are times I'll be passing by a call booth, and I'll be seeing people saying like, oh, your website photos need to get better, right? Like, hey, I saw this and there was an error on your website. I'm like, what are you doing? They're like, no, I saw another problem. So I pulled them on a call to tell them, like, how can you make your website better? I was like, okay. Then I see my web designer being called into that room, and my web designer is now telling that person, okay, this is how you solve this. I'm like, what are you, like, I know we solved, but they were going the extra mile. Right. So that's always amazing to see. So by the way, here's the fun part. A lot of the innovation that we do comes from our customers. Right? Like at any given point, we have at least about 30 to 38 special projects. We call them special projects, where we're trying out something new. It may not work, and it's fine. Right? So that's been a fun thing. And it's most of the special projects when our customers are like, hey, by the way, can you also ... So when our customer says that, we make a note of the ... and we're like, okay, let's see if we can do this, right? Let's see if we can help. Let's see if we can launch as a service. Can we do it free of cost? Can we charge for it? Whatever it is, right? So those are always like our special projects are so much fun.
Well, they're at Equinox, and I don't know if that's all under the Equinox umbrella, certainly under your business umbrella, but it sounds like you have such a unique culture compared to what we're normally exposed to. Would you agree? You're shaking your head. For those that aren't on YouTube watching us, he's shaking his head. He's agreeing with me.
So I think what differentiates us as a company or a group is not our machines. It's not we have 6 laboratories or we have like thousands of people. It's the culture that differentiates us, right? Our culture is based around our vision. Our culture is based on our purpose. Our culture is based on core values. And our culture is based on innovation. Right? And I think the biggest factor there is innovation, right? We have a quote at Equinox where we say fail forward fast, right? Like make your mistakes. Nobody's ever fired for making a mistake the first time. If you repeat it again and again, that's a separate problem, right? But if you try something new and you fail, that's completely fine. We literally wear those as badges of honor, right? So when I started telling people like, hey, we should do this, and nobody used to share. I was like, why is it not working? Then I'm like, okay, let me try one thing. On our next meeting, so we have innovation meetings every couple of weeks. In my next meeting, instead of talking about one of my successes, I actually spoke about my failure. I'm like, okay, guys, last week I did this and I completely bombed it. I completely lost the deal. I completely And then people then a couple of more people open, a couple of more people open. So then I realized that if you want people to share their failures, you need to start sharing your failures first. Right? So that was a lot of fun. And today that's literally we wear it as a badge of honor. If somebody's failed at something, we go pat them on the back, we have a round of applause. When new joinees come in within a month, if I meet them earlier, I ask them like, hey, what's new? What did you do new? Now I ask them, hey, what did you fail at last week? And they're all like, why is he asking us that? Is he going to fire us? Like, we're new here. I'm like, no, but if you're new, you must have failed at something. Then they all are quiet. Then I tell them, hey, last week what I did this, and look at the best I made. Like, okay. Then they start opening up, and then they realize that, hey, this is a part of the culture. It's okay to fail. It's actually encouraged. Because if you don't have the courage to fail, you don't have the courage to succeed.
Yeah. That's a quotable quote right there, Ashwin. I think that might be a great place to. I was going to ask you if you had any last thoughts you might want to leave with our audience. Not having the courage to fail, meaning that you don't have the courage to succeed, is one.
Oh,
Do you have any other thoughts you'd like to leave with them?
So I think it's better framed if you say, if you don't have the courage to fail, you don't have the strength to succeed, right?
Yes, that's better. Thank you.
One of my parting thoughts would be, if you're in the food business, right, you have to try new things. You have to have the courage to fail. You have to have the courage to experiment. If you are a founder, if you're a leader, create that culture, because trust me on this, and trust me, and I have done this multiple times. It's the culture that makes a difference. It's not the number of people, it's not the size, it's not the machinery, it's not how much money you pump into advertising, right? All of that will happen. But if you create a great culture, it'll attract great people, right? So I had read a quote a long time ago saying, hey, if you want to catch butterflies, you can either chase them with a net or just build a beautiful garden so they come and sit around you, right? What we did at Equinox, we built a beautiful garden. So today, almost every single Equinoxian has 1 or 2 offers from other companies in their pocket, but they don't go because of culture, right? By the way, out of 10 people who leave, 6 of them reapply back in the next 1 year. And the only reason, it's not because when they come back, we pay them more. By the way, if they come back, they actually start off where they left. We don't pay them more just because they got more somewhere else, right? It's because if people feel appreciated, right? If people feel passionate about the work they do, if they're given the freedom and they are, encouraged to try new things, they're patted on the back when they do something good, they're patted on the back when they do something wrong.
Yeah.
I think that's the key right there, right? And last but not the least, when you have a culture that way, you actually enjoy coming into. Like, I look forward to Monday mornings. So does the rest of Equinox, right? They look forward to it. We will talk about innovation. We talk about new things. We talk about failures. We talk about everything quite openly, like very transparently. Like, all our numbers are displayed. Like, every bay has a 55-inch LED TV mounted, and everyone can see everyone's numbers. It's as transparent as that, right? But that creates a culture of transparency. It creates a culture of trust. right? It creates a culture of like, if I fail, somebody's got my back, right? And we have 6 core values at Equinox. And one of the second last one is we have fun while serving others. So if I'm in office, if I don't hear laughter, if I don't hear clapping, if I don't hear high five through the day, I will go out and be like, what happened? Like, is everything okay? Right? And our last core value is we turn thoughts into things, which is innovation.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the most important pieces. So my last leaving, I would leave you with the thought that if you're in food and if you're not innovating, you're probably not going to be scalable.
Thank you, Ashwin. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Absolute pleasure, Pam. Thank you so much for having me.
And I wanted to say to our audience, if you enjoyed this interview with Ashwin as much as I did, please subscribe to our podcast or our YouTube channel so you're sure to get next week's episode. We look forward to bringing you more insight and innovation into the food industry. Until next time, I'm Pam Line-Miller.
Thanks for listening to Future Foodcast. Future Foodcast is powered by Farm to Plate, the leading food blockchain platform. Subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to stay up to date with the very latest innovations in the food industry.